If you're like me and you've wanted a simple way to lose body fat without having to count your calories, your macros, or follow strict diets, then this video is for you. I'm going to show you how I've been able to do just that by implementing some of the strategies found in this book here to change my habits and behaviors in a really easy way. They've helped me not only lose weight, but also keep it off, and I'm going to show you how to do that for yourself too. Hey, it's Aaron here from Fossa, and on this channel, we talk about simple strategies to lose weight and keep it off for good. In the past, I've relied on many methods to lose body fat, and the most recent one being counting macros and calories. And while it did work when I was following it every single day, I found myself thinking about what I was specifically eating and whether it was going to actually fit my macro targets. At the time, I thought this is what it takes. You know, if I wanted to eat whatever I wanted, all I had to make sure was that it's going to fit within these specific ratios and that I would eventually get to my goal. Sounds great in theory, but in reality, it doesn't always work out like that. And is it really necessary to do that? Turns out it's not necessary at all. Since I've been studying and going down the rabbit hole of habit and behavior change, I've been able to apply many of the principles to myself and to the clients that we work with, and we've seen some pretty awesome results. I've also had my fair share of mistakes too, especially when it comes to trying to change all of my habits in one hit overnight, which is what I've typically done in the past, and it's a big reason why I haven't been able to stick to it for any length of time. So one of the things right off the bat that I will say is that you need to think about habit and behavior change on a continuum rather than an on or off type switch. This was huge for both myself and the clients that I work with. The sooner we started to think in terms of a continuum, the faster we actually saw the results. We'll talk more about this specifically in a little bit. So the three biggest habit changes that I've made that have had the biggest impact overall have been, number one, eating slower, simply slowing down the speed at which I eat my food. This has been crucial because it actually gives my stomach time to communicate with my brain that, hey, I've had enough to eat and I don't need to actually eat any more. The second one is eating to 80% full. Losing weight or body fat is a relatively simple process. You take in less food than your body needs on a daily basis and you lose weight. But it doesn't always mean it's easy to do. This habit was probably the hardest to get used to, but it also had the biggest impact when it came to reducing my body weight. So this habit involved eating to about 80% full or just satisfied, which also means leaving a little bit of food behind. We often tend to serve up more than we actually need. And the third one was to drink more water throughout the day. When I look back at some of the reasons I was eating throughout the day, especially when I wasn't hungry and especially when I was working at home, were things to do with energy. I felt like I had no energy at the time. The only problem is, while I did eat in those times and feel energized, I quickly then became tired again and the cycle just continued. Drinking water really solved that problem for me. I no longer felt sluggish or tired throughout the day, which meant that I wasn't eating when I wasn't physically hungry. I therefore ended up eating less overall and therefore reduced my body weight. So how can you start changing your own behavior in a really simple way? In his book, Tiny Habits, BJ Fogg outlines a 7-step process that you can do to start new habits and to keep doing them. This was really helpful for me and for my clients. Step number 1, pinpoint what you want to achieve. Something like I want to lose weight is too vague. It needs to be really specific. And if possible, it needs to focus on a process rather than a strict number or outcome. So for example, it could be something like eat well consistently, or it could be eat less naturally or eat less more often. As I mentioned before, a lot of the habits that were impactful for me and for my clients involved eating less over time, which therefore influenced our weight. Step number 2 is to brainstorm all the ways that you could achieve that particular outcome. What behaviors or actions could you take to help you achieve this? So using one of the habits that I mentioned before, eating slowly, how could we do this? What are all the ways that you could think of that are going to help you eat your food slower? Don't overthink it, just write as many as you can down. Step number 3 is to identify the golden behaviors. So BJ Fogg recommends using a process known as focus mapping. This process involves putting all the actions and behaviors that you just came up with on a special chart. This is what it looks like. The key here is to narrow it down to your top 1 to 5 actions that you could take from the upper right quadrant. So step number 4 is to break the action down into a tiny habit. Think about trying to make the action so small and so easy that it would feel silly not to do it. You're trying to give yourself no reason not to do the specific action. So one of the habits that we implemented was to eat to 80% full. An easy way that we could do that is to start by leaving one bite behind at dinner only. It's almost too easy to say no to, and that's the point. You also want to think about breaking your action down into steps. And what's the first step that you could take? In the book, BJ gives an example of putting your shoes on as the first step to implementing a habit of walking. Step number 5 is to choose a prompt. The behaviors you're trying to do need to have a trigger for you to do them, otherwise you're likely to forget them. You can manipulate your environment to help you out here, such as putting a bottle or a glass of water on the table to encourage you to drink more water as you're eating your meal. Another way to use a prompt is habit stacking. So you can put your new habit onto a habit that's already automatic for you. So for example, as soon as I get out of bed or as soon as I brush my teeth, I will get dressed and put on my walking shoes. Step number 6 is to celebrate. Any action that you start doing and that you want to form into a habit needs celebration. Even an internal celebration that makes you feel good can work. It's an important step as it helps your brain encode that new behavior as something that's worth repeating. So it's just as important as actually doing the action itself. The key here is that the celebration needs to be in the moment and immediately after you've done the action. A really simple way that you could do this with something like eating to 80% full, as we mentioned before, just leaving one bite behind, is to simply sit there after you've left one bite behind and smile. When we smile, we start to feel good naturally. So by doing this, even though it feels forced, after we've done an action, starts to make us feel good. It starts to encode that this is a pattern worth repeating. Another celebration could be something as simple as an affirmation that you say to yourself. Something like, look at me go, or I nailed it, either out loud or just in your head, or any other phrase that makes you feel good. And step number 7 is to repeat, refine, and upgrade. This step is pretty straightforward. You want to repeat the actions that are successful. You found them easy to do and rewarding. And then you want to optimize the ones that you may have found difficult to do. How can you make them easier in future? And then all you want to do is make small upgrades along the way. Tiny little improvements on that one action. This whole process is really about finding what works best for you, and that helps you move towards your goals much faster. So start where you're at and focus on making tiny little changes one step at a time. You can also leverage the behavior and the habits that you're already doing. How can you manipulate that just a little bit more to help you succeed? A few easy ways to do this to help with weight loss are things such as how can you include as much incidental activity in your daily routine as possible. Another one is buying slightly smaller bowls and plates so that we naturally start to serve up less food, and that helps with the portion control. Another one that's quite simple to do is to park further away from the door when you go to the shops, so that you simply have more distance to walk before you go in. Small changes like these go a long way. So there you have it. If you found this helpful in any way, hit that like button as well as subscribe to the channel so that you stay up to date with our new content we're going to be bringing out. If you like this video, you might also like this video here, which others have found helpful too. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.